For this program has been provided by the Pennsylvania Public Television Network.
Is Pennsylvania getting the best judges? Critics say voter indifference has left the courts as the state's richest trove of political patronage. Others say it's still the best system. Hello, I'm Eric Rabe, picking the judges today on the state of Pennsylvania. Judges are elected in Pennsylvania, but a lot of people say the time has come for judicial reform. The judges' elections are often ignored by voters, so the will of Republican and Democratic leaders, especially in Philadelphia and other cities, plays a major role in who is picked to run and who ends up winning. There are Republicans and Democrats who argue, though, the input of the political system is vital. They say that makes sure that the judges are people from the community who know the local issues and standards. Well, Governor Casey recently selected nominees to fill court vacancies, and he tried to get politics out of the selection process. He ended up catching flack from both sides of the political aisle. Recent charges that Philadelphia judges took illegal payoffs from union leaders have added to pressure for reform. Our guest today in Philadelphia, former Judge Arlen Adams. He's a member of the governor's committee that recently selected nominees for vacant judgeships in Philadelphia. Also joining us from Philadelphia, State Senator Stuart Greenleaf, the Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And State Senator Joe Rocks, Democrat of Philadelphia, is also joining us. In Pittsburgh, our guest is State Senator Jim Kelly, Democrat of Westmoreland County. We'll talk with our guests in just a moment, but first, Kathleen McDonald reports on the bitter dispute over picking Pennsylvania judges.
If you want to try to drown out the chairman, then fine, but if you want to let me...
Mr. Chairman, I think it's a case of this committee being drowned out by you.
This is how the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing began on Tuesday. The committee was meeting to review Governor Casey's 10 nominees for Philadelphia judgeships. But almost immediately, Democrats and Republicans started shouting at each other. The Casey appointments made a number of Pennsylvania politicians unhappy, including Senator Frank Salvatore, a Philadelphia Republican.
I don't like the system. And if you want true merit selection system, let's have a true merit selection system, but not the way they played it. They're just fooling the public, that's all.
Salvatore believes the selection process cut out political involvement, but Philadelphia Judge Thomas McCormack says political parties already exercise too much control.
The present system is really a de facto appointment by political leaders. They say it's an elected process. But the truth is that it is a process by which the political leaders choose the judges.
McCormack points to Philadelphia, where the court system is racked by scandal. 15 judges, many supported by the political machines, have been suspended for allegedly taking kickbacks from a roofers union. Those suspensions are contributing to the city's enormous backlog of 9,000 criminal cases.
It's so essential that we get good judges in Philadelphia. It's so essential that we divorce them from the humiliation and degradation of having to go before the political parties and prostitute themselves and pander to their interests. I think it's wrong, and I think that there has to be a better system.
Some say much like the system used by Governor Casey to select Philadelphia's 10 judicial nominees. He appointed a special commission to choose candidates solely on their merits. That commission was headed by Philadelphia lawyer Patrick Ryan, who testified before the Judicial Committee.
It was age, experience, integrity, honesty, their ability to control a courtroom, their willingness to serve as a judge, common pleas judge, in Philadelphia.
But party leaders turned their backs on 4 of the 6 Casey nominees, choosing their own candidates instead. Casey nominee Darnell Jones says the system is gravely ill.
We are all public servants, and we have given our time and our lives at this point without any kind of great acclaim. We've just gone away every day and done our jobs. And now we've been offered a position which would allow us to do more for the public, and we're being effectively denied that simply because of our lack of political involvement.
But even the critics of the present system say that merit selection, the process by which the governor and Senate would control judicial appointments, is only as good as the people doing the selecting.
The merit selection system, if you get good, independent, competent people on the selection committee, is desirous. But that's always a question of getting good people. Who picks the pickers?
The nominations now rest with the Senate Rules Committee, which must approve the nominees before sending them to the full Senate for a vote that will not come for at least 2 weeks. Kathleen McDonald for the state of Pennsylvania.
There had been some hope, especially in Philadelphia, that some of those judges would be sitting on the bench perhaps as early as this week, but the Senate adjourned without taking action. Senator Greenleaf, the Philadelphia Inquirer, called this an example of the Republicans playing power politics, leaving Harrisburg when the situation was desperate in Philadelphia without approving the judges. How do you react to that?
Well, I don't think so. I think that we've tried to move the judges along as quickly as possible. When I received the nominees from the Rules Committee, I scheduled a hearing as quickly as possible. We spent the whole day, 7.5 hours, listening to testimony concerning the judicial nominees. And unfortunately, not all the members of the Senate were members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they wanted to have an opportunity to review the notes of testimony and the testimony offered before the committee.
Did you
I
argue,
think that's a legitimate request.
Did you argue, Senator Greenleaf, that this was an urgent situation and that maybe taking a 2-week break at this point was not a good idea?
I personally would have voted for the judges if they had been brought up before us, but my colleagues on the Republican caucus, as I say, all of which were not members of the Judiciary Committee, had requested additional time to review the nominees, and I thought that that was a legitimate request, and I feel confident that they will be brought before the Senate for a full vote. And I think it's only been a matter of a few weeks since the whole process began. And I think we're dealing with it as quickly as we can.
All right, Senator Joe Rocks, you're a Democrat. Is this moving along quickly enough or not?
No, not at all. If you accept the very basic premise that what we have in Philadelphia is a crisis, that's what Governor Casey has said. I support him for coming to Philadelphia in the most responsible manner. This is not his crisis. He did not create it. And based on that, we had the forming up of a selection panel. The panel sent its names. I do credit Senator Greenleaf, by the way, for moving in expeditious fashion to have the hearings on 10 individuals that the Judiciary Committee has now judged to be fully qualified and certainly very much needed. We have an increasing caseload daily in Philadelphia. We have a crisis in our judiciary, which speaks to the very fabric of life in the city of Philadelphia. What we have now in the Senate, very simply stated, is the Republican leadership, the majority in the very firm grasp of, I assume, a couple of Republican bosses. They are delaying the process. They know exactly what they're doing. It was totally irresponsible to leave the Senate yesterday without having confirmed 10 people desperately needed to sit on the Common Pleas Court of Philadelphia.
Of course, during the Thornburg administration, the charge went the other way, that the Democrats were holding up nominees of the governor, the Republican governor at that point. What are we looking at here? Just an extension of things as they've always been in Harrisburg?
I would hope not. I don't think there's anyone who looks at this situation in Philadelphia. There were 4 names proposed. Interestingly enough, the governor himself pulled those names back when they did not seem to meet the right political balance for the confirmation process. Let's face where we are now. We have 10 vacancies that has been added to by way of 15 suspensions. The enormity of that kind of an accumulating backlog, anyone who understands the judicial process can very well see that we have a crisis. And based on that crisis...
I guess what I'm getting at is, why should the governor be forced to pull back nominations of people that he thinks are qualified in the face of, as you say, they're not meeting the right political criteria?
Well, I support the governor's right, any governor's right, to come forward with his nominations. We had a very serious square-off on Judiciary this week because on unprecedented fashion, Senator Greenleaf here ordered the commission to come in and finally Chairman Pat Ryan agreed to come and testify. That's never been done in the history of this Commonwealth. What you have is the process of advice and consent. You have the nominating charge in the hand of the governor, and then you have the confirmation process in the hands of the Senate. That's our system. And
now, we should say this is the system when there are vacancies that develop, not normally. Of course, judges are elected in Pennsylvania.
That's exactly right. I happen to strongly support the election of judges. While I am supportive of what has been the naming of these 10 people by a selection process, I do that fully in the context of identifying a crisis, an emergency that we have right now in Philadelphia. Other than that, I am opposed to merit selection. I would much rather have this in the hands of the voters, the people. They have a right to make a decision. We have 3 equal branches of government.
Now, let me follow up on that just a minute, but I want to go back to something that you said a second ago. It sounded to me as though you were critical of the Judiciary Committee for asking the head of this nominating committee, lawyer Pat Ryan from Philadelphia, for coming in and testifying. Is that, did I read you correctly? Or?
That reverberated, I think, across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania 2 days ago. I am very critical of that. It has never before been done. I sat on Judiciary over the Thornburg years. We never dared bring before them. If a governor, and this is a reduction to the absurd, wants to put names on a dartboard and pick them out, it's his right, it's his constitutional obligation to provide for us the names.
Well, Senator Greenleaf, why did you call Pat Ryan?
Well, first of all, I think it's important for us to make sure that we are going to correct the situation that now exists in Philadelphia, and to make sure that we, when we confirm these nominees, that they are the best qualified nominees that we can have access to. And since this was a selection process in which there was some questions about, it was referred to as a nonpartisan selection process, but an initial look at and review of some of the people that were nominated to the commission to select them would indicate that they'd had some contact with the governor during his most recent political campaign. And we wanted to make sure that that wasn't a situation, that we had a committee that wasn't just a committee that was appointed because of their support for the governor, but it's a genuine committee that was looking for the best candidates available. And then there were some allegations about influence by the politicians that attempted to influence the decisions. And I think it was a legitimate inquiry.
You're talking there, perhaps, about the reports that the Democratic City Committee in Philadelphia asked some of these nominees who would run in the spring primary.
No, he wasn't talking about that, Eric. Let me jump in on an important point. Understand this.
Well, let's... How about if we ask Senator Greenleaf to clear it up, then I'll give you an opportunity.
Certainly.
Do you mind?
The fact is that I think that was one of the problems of the fact that there were reports in the papers about that, but the primary concern was that there were reports from some members in the Senate that there was some undue influence attempted to be exercised upon that committee. In addition, some of the other counties, for example, the ones that I'm most familiar with, for example, Montgomery County, that the people that were appointed to the five appointments in Montgomery County were people who were very, very active in the Democratic Party. One was running for a county commissioner now. One is the chairman of the Democratic Party in Montgomery County.
Well, this is the way it's always been. Should there be a change?
Well, that's true, but what I'm pointing out to the fact is that it was not a nonpartisan process, and so we wanted to look into that process, for example, in Philadelphia, because that involved the most number of judges.
All right, let me give Senator Rocks a chance here now to follow up on the point you were going to make.